You don't always need massive armies to bring a country to its knees. Sometimes all you need is to set up that ruthless mathematical equation that will drive your opponent to bankruptcy using its own wealth. This was precisely at the heart of the asymmetric gamble Tehran was playing to bring the Persian Gulf to its knees. They would darken the sky with swarms of drones costing next to nothing and watch as Saudi Arabia fired off millions of dollars worth of Patriot missiles in a matter of seconds. Thus, the region would be dragged into a financial black hole. It looks flawless. However, thousands of kilometers away, an unexpected actor, one that had already solved this deadly equation in its own skies with blood and steel, made a forceful entrance into the Middle Eastern chessboard: Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's surprise visit to Jeddah on March 26 to 27, 2026, erased all the established patterns in the region overnight. This defense pact, signed behind closed doors with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, went far beyond a simple arms shipment. This move is a strategic checkmate that builds a new geopolitical shield in the Gulf, locks down Iran's airstrike network, and simultaneously accelerates Russia's bloodletting in the global arms market. Zelensky's statement in Jeddah, where he told the cameras, "We are open to supporting those who support us," was not mere diplomatic courtesy. The underlying message was flawless and clear. Just as Ukraine repelled Russia's attacks with high-tech, low-cost interceptor systems, it is now bringing this very lethal defense architecture to the heart of the Gulf. The Kyiv administration is no longer merely a side struggling to survive. It is a power directly exporting its tactical warfare experience. In the coming minutes, you will witness how this new generation defense line from Ukraine has turned Iran's biggest trump card, the Strait of Hormuz blackmail, into a paper tiger. But before we get to that major turning point, we need to look at the grim picture that drove the Riyadh administration to knock on Ukraine's door with an urgent message. Following Operation Epic Fury, Iran had redirected its entire arsenal of retaliatory weapons directly toward the Gulf, instantly turning the sky into a ball of fire. The toll of the past 27 days is truly devastating. According to data compiled by Al Arabiya, Iran launched a total of approximately 4,900 missiles and drones at Gulf countries during this period. Approximately 3,800 of these were drones, and over 1,100 were ballistic or cruise missiles. Between 83 and 85% of the attacks were directed not at Israel, but at Gulf countries. The United Arab Emirates bore the brunt of the attacks. Over 2,200 missiles and drones were directed at UAE territory. More than 600 munitions were launched at Saudi Arabia. The targets were not chosen at random. Iran targeted the lifelines of Saudi Arabia. The country's largest oil export terminal, the Ras Tanura oil refinery, was struck multiple times. Aramco's massive Sheba oil field, a production hub with a daily capacity of 1 million barrels, also bore the brunt of the attacks. Iran's primary strategy in these attacks was not militarily to occupy Saudi Arabia or the UAE.
The objective was to wage an economic and logistical attrition war. Saudi defense systems, including Patriot and THAAD, destroyed the vast majority of these attacks in mid-air, but each Patriot missile costs between $4 and $6 million. The cost of a Shahed drone launched by Iran, however, is around $20,000 to $50,000. The math is brutal. With every interception, Saudi Arabia was spending 100 times what Iran was spending, and stockpiles were dwindling. This was not a sustainable equation. Even the $9 billion Patriot sale approved in January 2026 did not fully resolve the issue because deliveries would take months and Iran's drone tempo was increasing every week. Saudi Arabia needed a solution that was fast, cheap, and could be deployed immediately. That's exactly where Ukraine came into the picture. The Sting interceptor drone produced by Wild Hornets costs approximately $2,500 per unit. It neutralizes enemy drones by colliding with them or exploding near them. In the war in Ukraine, it has demonstrated a success rate of over 80% against Shahed drones. Skyfall's P1 SUN model also offers similar technology, being lighter and more suitable for mass production. It had already been reported that Saudi energy giant Aramco held direct talks with these companies in early March, but this time the matter has escalated to the level of an intergovernmental agreement. Initially, the discussion involves 5,000 to 10,000 interceptor drones. Ukraine had previously announced it has the capacity to produce over 2,000 interceptors daily. Under the agreement, a significant portion of this production could be allocated to Saudi Arabia. Let's put these numbers into perspective. If Iran were to launch 50 drones in a single day, Saudi Arabia could shoot them all down using interceptors priced at $2,500 each. The total cost would be $125,000. Doing the same job with a Patriot system would cost between $200 and $300 million. The difference is significant enough to alter the course of a war. But it's not just drones being sold. An official speaking to AFP put it very clearly. It's not just about the interceptors. The plan includes the system plus expertise plus artificial intelligence plus the sharing of data analysis. A much deeper transfer of technology and know-how is at stake. Ukraine had already sent 228 experts to the Gulf starting in early March. These experts are currently stationed across Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan. This number will increase under the agreement. And the experts are teaching Saudi operators how to conduct electronic warfare against drone swarms, how to jam the GPS signals of Shahed drones, and how to position mobile fire groups. The AI-based data analysis systems integrated by Ukraine, working in sync with Saudi Arabia's existing early warning radars, are effectively erecting an impenetrable electronic barrier in the skies over the Gulf. In other words, Ukraine's 4 years of combat experience will be directly injected into Saudi Arabia's defense infrastructure.
Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson Yuri Ignat summarized the situation in a previous statement. "We have manufacturers capable of producing some of the best and most cost-effective air defense systems in large quantities." Ignat had described claims that sending experts to the Gulf weakens Ukraine's own defense as somewhat manipulative and incorrect. The estimated contract value starts in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Some analysts predict the full package could reach $1 to $2 billion. What will Ukraine receive in return? There is talk of PAC-2 and PAC-3 Patriot missiles. These are among the munitions Ukraine needs most to counter Russia's ballistic missiles. Direct investment from Saudi funds into Ukraine's defense industry and opportunities for joint production are being discussed, and diplomatically, a deepening network of relations with the Gulf, which further erodes Russia's influence in the region. It's time to pause and look at the bigger picture. For Ukraine, this agreement is a strategic turning point. According to the BBC, 11 countries have requested drone defense support from Ukraine. In the global arms export market, once dominated by Russia, Ukraine is rising with its battle-tested solutions. Russia's share of global arms exports had dropped to 6.8%. Between 2016 and 2020, this figure stood at 21%. Ukraine is filling this gap with technologies developed against Putin's ally, Iran. But Saudi Arabia isn't just striking deals with Ukraine. Riyadh is building a multi-layered defense architecture, with each layer relying on a separate strategic partner. In January 2026, the U.S. approved the sale of 730 PAC-3 MSE Patriot missiles worth $9 billion to Saudi Arabia. This constitutes the upper layer designed to counter high-altitude ballistic missile threats. The Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement signed with Pakistan in September 2025 is in effect. In other words, an attack on one side is considered an attack on the other. Pakistan's missile technologies and military personnel support are on the table. Negotiations for a trilateral defense pact with Turkey are accelerating. Bayraktar drone technologies and air defense systems are being discussed. 28 new contracts were signed with France at the February 2026 World Defense Exhibition, particularly in the field of missile technologies. And Saudi Arabia's own domestic defense industry is also growing rapidly. The Near-X mobile electronic warfare platform, developed by Intrade Defense Technologies, is in the field. The AI-powered Rapid Response System, BARQ AI Rapid Interceptor, designed to counter low-cost drone threats, was unveiled at the World Defense Exhibition. Under Vision 2030, the rate of domestic production is increasing and reliance on imports is decreasing. And there is much more to say on this topic. If you find value in TGN, now is the perfect time to subscribe to the channel. Now let's take a look at how another of Iran's strategic assets slipped from its grasp. Iran's biggest trump card in this war wasn't drone swarms. The biggest trump card was the Strait of Hormuz. Approximately 20% of the world's seaborne crude oil passes through this narrow waterway. That's 17 million barrels a day. 88% of the oil leaving the Persian Gulf uses this strait. About $600 billion in annual energy trade flows through this 21-mile-long passage, but the actual navigable area is much narrower. We're talking about 2 lanes, each about 2 miles wide and a 2-mile buffer zone. The actual usable area is only 6 miles. Iran knew this and effectively closed the strait starting February 28th. Senior advisor to the Revolutionary Guards, Ibrahim Kabari, declared openly, "The strait is closed. If anyone tries to pass, we will set their ships on fire." Commercial traffic dropped by 80%. Oil prices briefly surpassed $100. Insurance premiums skyrocketed. Forbes described this as Iran's real nuclear option. Iran planned to use this leverage to bring the US and Israel to the negotiating table. On March 11th, 3 commercial ships were struck. The next day, 2 more ships were engulfed in flames. Iran's message was clear: no one can pass through this strait. But Saudi Arabia had another plan up its sleeve: the East-West crude oil pipeline, also known as Petroline.
This pipeline is exactly 1,200 kilometers long. It begins at the massive Abqaiq oil facilities in eastern Saudi Arabia, very close to the Persian Gulf. It cuts across the country from one end to the other, reaching the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea coast in the west. It was built in the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq War, specifically for such a scenario, and on March 11, 2026, it reached full capacity. Aramco CEO Amin Nasser's statement that we will reach full capacity within a few days came true. The pipeline is currently operating at a daily capacity of 7 million barrels. Oil now reaches the Red Sea directly without passing through the Strait of Hormuz and is shipped to global markets via tankers. Bloomberg's detailed analysis summarizes the situation as follows. Saudi Arabia has transformed a forgotten pipeline into the planet's most critical energy artery. Iran's threat to close the Strait of Hormuz has been largely neutralized by this single move. The loading capacity at Yanbu cannot handle the pipeline's full flow. Actual exports are limited to around 3 to 4.5 million barrels per day. And since the oil exits into the Red Sea, the Houthi threat at the Bab el-Mund Strait poses a new risk. But in the strategic equation, Iran's most powerful leverage has been severely eroded. Think about it. For years, Iran has held global energy markets hostage with the threat of closing the Strait of Hormuz. This single threat had the power to wipe hundreds of billions of dollars off global markets. But now Saudi Arabia's oil is flowing into the Red Sea without passing through the strait. Ukraine's interceptor drones will protect the pipeline, pumping stations, and the port of Yanbu. Thus, Iran's 2 major trump cards are being eroded simultaneously. Moreover, the U.S. continues to ramp up pressure in the strait. Over the past week, Iranian coastal facilities, anti-ship missile positions, and boat depots near the Strait of Hormuz have been struck. 2 Marine Expeditionary Units have been deployed to the region. Reports indicate that elements of the 82nd Airborne Division may also be heading to the region. Trump issued an ultimatum to Iran to open the strait by April 6th. If it does not, he signaled that strikes on power plants and oil infrastructure would follow. Iran's navy has been largely destroyed. According to Trump, 42 ships were sunk in the first 3 days of the operation. Additionally, 16 mine-laying ships were destroyed. The remaining fast attack boats and remotely controlled explosive-laden vessels are still causing problems in the strait, but this capability is dwindling with each passing day. As Iran finds itself cornered on all sides, it is turning to its allies, but the support coming from there is not enough to change the situation. Russia is providing Iran with satellite intelligence and drone components. It shares the locations of U.S. and Israeli ships, aircraft, and bases using real-time satellite imagery. It is sending upgrade parts for drone navigation, communication, and targeting systems. According to the Washington Post, the CIA has confirmed this intelligence sharing. China, meanwhile, is taking a more cautious approach, but the support it provides is critical. It is reducing the reliance of Iran's missiles and drones on GPS and improving their accuracy through the Beidou navigation system. It is transferring radar and electronic warfare technology. And most importantly, it is financing the regime's war economy by purchasing a large portion of Iran's oil in yuan. According to Elazar's analysis, Russia and China's support is enhancing Iran's ability to see the battlefield, but it does not provide the capacity to change the battlefield. To summarize, China's approach: let the war drag on, but don't let it burn me. It is trying to maintain its strategic partnership without risking its own energy security. But Beijing is also well aware of this. 45.7% of the oil China imports via Iran normally passes through the Strait of Hormuz. The longer the strait remains closed, the more damage China suffers. That is why China, while supporting Iran on one hand, is calling for an end to the conflict on the other. It is writhing in a strategic dilemma. The picture is different for Russia, but the outcome is similar. Putin may see a short-term advantage, believing that the war in Iran is depleting U.S. stockpiles and resources. Rising oil prices mean Russia can generate more revenue from the sanctioned oil it sells via its shadow fleet. But these advantages are temporary. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz will not be permanent. As Iran weakens, its control over the strait will also loosen, and Russia's biggest problem remains. The flow of Shahed components is being cut off. Ukraine is taking Russia's place in the global arms market, and its influence in the Gulf is at its lowest historical level. But this support is not enough to salvage Iran's crumbling strategic position. Now let's assess the situation as a whole. Drone salvos are becoming ineffective. The defense of Gulf countries is strengthening, and Ukrainian technology will accelerate this process. The Hormuz card is wearing thin. The pipeline bypass is operational, and U.S. Marines are deployed in the strait. The Yemeni Navy has been largely destroyed. The remaining small boats are being eliminated by the U.S.'s ongoing strikes. Over 4,900 missiles and drones have been launched, but Gulf defenses have destroyed 85 to 95% of them in mid-air. Iran's intimidation and deterrence capabilities are shrinking day by day. And perhaps the most bitter paradox is this: Iran's most effective asymmetric weapon, cheap drone swarms, was based on forcing the enemy to respond with expensive missiles. Now they can be shot down by $2,500 interceptor drones. When this equation changes, Iran's entire war doctrine collapses. Recall the 1988 Operation Praying Camel. On that day, the U.S. had destroyed half of Iran's fleet in a matter of hours. But what is happening now makes that day look like a picnic, because this time it's not just ships sinking. Iran's asymmetric warfare strategy itself is sinking. Saudi Arabia stands at the center of this transformation. In the short term, it is replenishing its Patriot stockpiles from the U.S., acquiring affordable anti-drone technology from Ukraine, and developing its own BARQ interceptor. In the medium term, it is forming strategic alliances with Pakistan and Turkey and transferring missile technologies from France. In the long term, it is becoming independent through its own domestic defense industry. And while doing all this, it is neutralizing Iran's straight threat through a pipeline bypass. This two-tiered strategy constitutes the most comprehensive asymmetric defense move of the past decade. The first deliveries of interceptor drones to Saudi Arabia are expected to begin in the coming weeks. Ukrainian experts will intensify on-site training. The U.S. ultimatum regarding the Strait of Hormuz grants a deadline until April 6th, and how Iran responds under this pressure will directly determine not only the Gulf, but also global energy markets, maritime trade, and the balance of power among major nations. Keep your eyes on this region, because what's happening here isn't just the story of one country, it's the story of an entire system, and the next move could change everything. This content was prepared by Iran Unfiltered. Thank you for following us and watching until this point. If this analysis added value for you, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every comment and every share helps keep these videos coming. In the next video, we'll be back with even more critical developments. See you soon.